Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for taking the opportunity to join us for our November First Friday webinar. My name is Ian. I currently serve as the Northwest NWACUHO President-elect, and we're joined here with Kurt from Mahlum, who's going to be presenting to us today on presentation skills to get us ready for the conference that'll be down in Eugene, Oregon, February 5th through 7th. And so hopefully you'll be able to get some nuggets of knowledge and wisdom from Kurt's years of experience and support with Northwest NWACUHO. And so at this time, I'll turn it over to Kurt.
Thanks, Ian. I appreciate it. And thanks everyone for investing some time. Hopefully this will be useful. And as I just want to let you know that I will continue to be a resource even beyond today. If you want to reach out to me and ask questions, I'm certainly here to help. So I have a series of slides that we'll go through, and I'm going to start my own timer, which is maybe just even a little tool of the trade. You know, time management actually is important, and at any conference or any presentation, you have to manage the time that you have. So we'll just start on this conversation, and if there's dying questions as we go through, please interrupt. It's okay. I want it to be useful for you. So now if you joined a little bit late, I am sitting in here in our nation's capital in DC. I actually presented at a conference yesterday. And as such, I did a little bit of homework, and I wanted to just acknowledge that the land that I am on is the ancestral lands of the NWACUHO and the Piscataway people. We pay respect to their elders, past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together here today on the lands that you reside in. I think it's important, at least with my firm, and I think with the work you do, beginning from a place of inclusion and respect for the lived identity and the historical nature of the land is important. So I've got 4 basic agenda topics, just kind of why are we here? Why is developing good presentation skills important? I've got some maybe helpful hints and some things to avoid. And then at the end, there are some resources that you could do some more reading and just get prepared as you're considering any public speaking, whether it's at Northwest NWACUHO or not. So I'll introduce myself again. My name is Kurt Hapaala. I am an architect. I am the owner of Mahlum Architects now. I've been doing this for quite a long time, and many of you have had I guess the pleasure. That sounds a little egotistical. We've worked together. It's been wonderful. The pleasure's really been all mine in terms of understanding your students and your student needs, and hopefully I've brought a little bit of humor and experience to the table as well. Speaking of experience, I have been doing this for a long time. If you look at the first year, 2007, I don't know if that dates me or dates you. Were you in high school? Were you born yet? I was giving presentations at Northwest NWACUHO in 2007. So I've been doing this for quite a while. I've enjoyed it. I feel like the institution has given more to me and my firm than we've probably given back. But we do try and give back with this engagement and these presentations as well. So why is presentation skill building important? First and foremost, effective communication. Believe it or not, that takes some practice, and we're not all good at it. And you're going to be needing to communicate internally with your institution and with your teams, but you're going to be engaging externally. It could be at your church or in your community. You might be a part of the neighborhood board. You might be speaking at a conference. So all these things are great ways to just develop that skill. You have a lot of stakeholders that you do engage with, your RAs, your communities within the residence hall, the organization with which you work. And so diverse voices and diverse perspectives and learning to effectively communicate is going to help. Your passion and excitement for what you do can actually be a motivator for your teams. Getting people excited about what the topic is through your presentation style is going to be very important. I'm just noticing a chat up here. Oh, thank you, Tiffany. Ian, can you keep an eye on the chats just in case there is a question and I'm just rolling and not paying attention?
I got you.
Thank you. Oh, now I got to get back to clicking forward. Knowledge sharing. I think it's so important that you have knowledge to share, whether you think you do or not, wherever you are in your career and your years of experience. So learning to share and speak, like at Northwest NWACUHO, is a great opportunity. When you're speaking from a place of confidence, it is more impactful. It is more interesting. You draw your audience in through that demonstrated expertise. And then personal and professional growth. I'm still learning and evolving my own presentation style. And it's something that will just be with you throughout your career. So some helpful hints. So let's move on to some helpful hints. I think understanding the why of your content. Why are you planning to deliver this content? Making sure that you understand the content. You don't have to be a Rhodes Scholar necessarily about it, but making sure you have a comprehensive understanding. Spending some time organizing your thoughts. It kind of seems simple, but sometimes you forget about that. And really thinking about your audience. So I'm going to break those concepts down a little bit. So the why. What is that message that you're so compelled to convey? And why do you think it's important? Right? It doesn't matter to the subject matter. Understanding why it's important to you, and then thinking about your audience and what is it that you want to leave with them? What is the lessons learned? What is the takeaway? If you learn nothing else from this presentation, this is what I want you to know. And again, your passion and commitment, showing that deep connection to the subject matter, will actually raise the level of connectedness of your audience, because they will see in your voice and in your movement and in the care that you have that this is an important topic. So understanding your content, like I said, it's great, and it's almost dare I say required to have a personal experience with the content, but maybe you don't want to go that far, because you can share experiences of other students or stakeholders or something that you observed and still do it with passion and commitment. Telling stories is more interesting than lists of bullet points. Making it real through a personal story or an anecdote that you maybe heard grounds the information in a way that people can easily understand. And clearly, if you've done any research, formal or informal, sharing that research will also breed credibility, because it's clear that you've taken the time to understand this thoroughly. And if you've applied the knowledge you want to share, right? If you can say, I have actually tried these things and I got it right over here, and it didn't work over here, but I learned a lot from the mistake that was made. All of those just enrich the content and demonstrate that competency. Okay. I feel like I'm moving too fast. Organizing your thoughts. Whenever I start to write a presentation abstract, or even organizing my thoughts around delivering content, I want to start with an outline. I want to understand why I'm speaking about it, how I've broken it down into understandable chunks, and to see if there's a proper flow. Sometimes you might get your thoughts down in an outline and realize I need to reorganize them. It flows better this way. It makes the dots will be more connected if I reorganize it a little bit. Just like good writing skills, there needs to be an introduction, the main body, and a conclusion. It's very easy to get your audience lost because you have all this information you want to share, but it was confusing when it came on the screen or out of your mouth. Or at Mahlum and in many design firms that spend a lot of our time interviewing for work. So we've interviewed at Central Washington, we've interviewed at Oregon State, many universities. It's really important to have a key overriding message, or a KOM. Why would what is the audience getting out of that? What's the big idea? And then that key overriding message needs to be laced or stitched through, stitching through the entire subject matter. And then you conclude with that key overriding message again. Hit people over the head first, tell the why, and then remind them what you're talking about. And then again, stories, case studies, visual aids, anecdotes, all of the color and adjectives and passion that can come out through storytelling will make the presentation resonate with the audience in much more deeper way than, again, just facts and figures on a screen. All right, consider your audience. If you're an emerging professional or a mid-level professional, and you think that there's some senior housing officers in the audience, or some people that have been around the industry more than you, don't assume they know more than you, and don't assume that the audience has the knowledge that you have, right? So it's really important to, kind of set some of those inhibitions or anxiety that the audience is so esteemed and whatever. You have something to share. And so make sure you're clear about what you're sharing and explain things. Assume someone in the audience may need some accommodation. So as we're thinking about inclusion, I think NWACUHO does a great job with closed captioning or open captioning, providing microphones so that if you have a soft voice, it can project. That visual aids, even this, what you're looking at, I've got a relatively dark background and high contrast, big font. Just thinking about accessible presentation is going to be important as well, so that your that assumption that you make that there is some accommodation, those audience members also feel included in the content. Is the audience a mix of professionals, or are they more homogenous? So NWACUHO is a good example. We're all going to be deeply connected to the student experience and student housing, but there could be architects in the room, there could be engineers in the room, contractors, even vendors. There's going to be a variety of people that are in the audience. So again, concepts that a housing professional might understand, the furniture vendor might not, or the washer and dryer vendor might not. So taking the time to explain yourself is actually really a good way to make that connection and make the presentation meaningful. Would more audience participation enrich the experience? So, the sage on the stage is a very classic way of delivering education in our country and even in other countries. But when it becomes interactive, or when there's a way to break down some of that distance and bring people together and make more human connections through talking about the subject matter, or maybe there's a game, or even with using our mobile devices, right? Using Menti or other platforms to ask questions and get quick input. It's still interactive and can be really beneficial. You also have to be prepared in some situations to evolve your presentation based on the feedback that you just got, which is can put you on your toes, but also can make that presentation even more exciting. So pro tips, what are some of the things I could leave with you? Again, thinking deeply about your why. If you sound passionate, your audience will get behind it. They will feel the passion and commitment in the content. If you have command of the material, you will automatically sound very confident, and they will automatically be drawn to, this is a content expert. And it's not a imposter syndrome, because you're up there delivering that content. You do have command of it. You are an expert, and feel good about that. One little thing that I learned from doing some improvisational training, and even, if you think about news reporting, don't bury the lead. Often I'll see a presentation start, and there's lots of facts and figures and stuff happening, but I don't understand what they're talking about. And only later in slide 15 or slide 20, it's like, oh, you're trying to make this bigger point. Well, now I've already lost what did you say in the first 15 slides? Because now it finally clicks for me. So don't bury the lead. You have a main point, make it first. And then considering your audience, and architects are really bad at this. We have acronyms, and we use big language. Use plain language. Keep things very simple. That way, it's not only an accessible tool, but the audience can just listen and receive the information and not have to figure out what pedantic means or juxtaposition or something like that. Anyway, you sound smart and still use plain language. Okay, helpful hints to practice. And I put practice in capital letters because, believe it or not, you should practice before you walk into that room and plug in your laptop and go. Practice makes perfect. We've all heard that. I don't think you should be aspiring to perfection, though. I don't think anybody can. So there's some things I want to just mention. Eye contact, body language, pace, volume, tone, inflection, and physical emotion. Now, here we sit in a virtual environment, and while that's wonderful in some ways, it really breaks down the human to human connection, and you can't see the rest of my body. But since we are back from our virtual conferences to real conferences, we're all together, these tools are actually going to be important because you will be standing in front of 25, 50 people in a room. And I think that's great to have some of these very basic things in mind. So make eye contact, but don't just stare at one person. Like if Ian was in the front row and I spent my whole time talking to him, he might feel incredibly uncomfortable. And everybody else is going to be like, does he even know I'm here? So making eye contact is really important. And varying that eye contact. So as you're presenting your content, be looking around the entire room and acknowledge everyone. And sometimes if you're an introvert, if you're like, oh my God, I can't make eye contact, pick points in the room that you can look at. So maybe you're looking past people, but it'll still give the impression that you are engaging the entire room. And I think that's important. A note about looking down or up. Oftentimes, if you're looking down, maybe because you've got some notes or you're a little nervous or you're looking up, it kind of demonstrates maybe a lack of confidence and can actually potentially make some of the audience feel a little uncomfortable because like, well, what's going on? What's Kurt doing? He's not looking at us. He's looking everywhere else but us. Okay, so body language and posture. Using confident body language, I think, is important. So sitting up straight, like our parents told us, and just looking professional and appropriate is actually important. So slouching and kind of a body posture that's closed in isn't inviting either. I like to move around. In fact, yesterday my presentation, it was a huge room. I had over 100 people and these big jumbotrons, and it was kind of impressive, but I was sitting at a table and I kind of hated it because it limited my ability to use my hands, to move around, to just engage the audience in different ways. But I think if you can move, it might make you feel comfortable. Therefore, it might make you feel more confident, but move purposefully. If you're shuffling or you're wandering, it can be distracting as well. So when you move purposefully and have that confident and comfortable posture, you'll be inviting people in just through who you are. Again, I say develop a comfortable posture, but not too comfortable. So no slouching, all that. I'll often lean against the credenza, kind of like I'm leaning because I'm not hopefully too intimidating, and I want to be comfortable and speak plainly and invite you to come and be a part of the conversation. So if you're really standing up very firm and too erect, that could look weird too. Holding something. Oftentimes you don't know what to do with your hands. And if you're like me, you're going to use them. And sometimes that can be distracting. So if you have notes, holding them or holding a pencil, you might be holding a clicker because you're advancing your slides. If it helps you feel comfortable, then it's great. You can hold a teddy bear if you wanted. People might be wondering if that's going to be part of the presentation, but it just, you need to feel comfortable up there. So some of those, the body language is going to be important in that. Pace, volume, tone, inflection. And again, I mentioned I feel like I'm moving too fast. Trying to go quickly is not a good thing. So that gets back to matching the content with the time allowed. So here we are. I'm timing myself. We're 18 minutes in, almost 19 minutes. And so I know that I've got plenty of time to get through my content. And I've given this presentation before, so I'm fairly confident we're going to have time for questions at the end. But I have been in presentations where I've watched or I've been a part of too much content. We've left no time for questions and answers, and we barely got our content in. And that's unfortunate, because if you have a question, you're waiting to raise your hand maybe. If I've not given you that opportunity, then it really, there's some, it's maybe less successful than it could be. We talked about projecting your voice. Hopefully, if there's a microphone, and using a microphone is its own kind of uncomfortable thing that you might need to get used to. Where do you hold your microphone? Do you put it right up to your face like you're a singer, or do you hold it down here against your body? Or the microphone's going to help from an access and accommodation standpoint. But learning to project your voice is still a good thing to do, because if you're in a residential community and you're talking to 50 of your students, you probably won't have a microphone. So, and if you speak quietly, just learning to just really, project those pipes is a good thing to work on. Moderating tone as it suits the contents is really important. Hopefully you've been noticing that my pace and my tone is going up and down. If I'm talking about being passionate, then maybe I'm a little more quiet, or if I'm terribly excited about something, you can see it on my face and I'm smiling. All of those are little cues that make the presenter a dynamic speaker, and really will make it more inviting. Inflection, pauses, changes in voice or emphasis. If you can get really quiet and say, I want you to leave this room remembering one thing, and then you pause, and then you deliver that one thing. It is so important in our work to do X. Changing that voice, really people will key into, okay, he or she is delivering, I need to listen to this. And it just makes it more interesting. If you're monotone and you're quiet and you're looking down, it's just not going to be that exciting. So they're little things. They're really not, they're big deals, but they're little, and they do require some attention and some work. So physical emotion, expansive gestures, and it's hard to me for me to show you what that is on the screen, and I've got my fake background, but gesturing to the screen if there's an image, not turning to it and say, hey, there's this really important image I want to show you. It'd be better to move toward the screen and gesture towards the image, and be a little bit more theatrical about, hey, this is important and I want to show you why, and look at this and look at that. I think that physical emotion is important. Smile, let people know that you're approachable, that you're nice, that you're fun. Laugh, crack a joke. If your technology doesn't work out, acknowledge it and just say, well, what are you gonna do? I don't know. All of that just breaks down the barriers and lets your audience into this conversation. And so a physical stimulation can be effective. So what do I mean by that? Maybe you need to describe the act of bowling, and so you physically kind of mimic what it is to bowl, or mimic what it is to write on a chalkboard. Those are fun and interactive, and just shows the dynamic quality of your personality and the content that you want to share. Now, showing emotion, that's a tough one, and it's a tough one for me because I can get very emotional. I can actually start to cry when I talk about something that's near and dear to my heart. It might be something from my past. It might be one of the projects I did with you and your students, because I had a moment with the students that stuck with me. And I have a hard time with it, and I'm almost tearing up just thinking about that. It's okay. It's okay to show emotion, because the audience will be like, wow, this really means something. Now, breaking down and crying and then gathering yourself, that's tough. And I would run up to you and give you a hug, probably, because I've been there. Just know that emotion's okay. You are still a professional. You still are giving good content, and it's okay because you are human. So just know that. So some pro tips. Again, making eye contact. If Ian's in the front row and I make contact with him and I smile and he smiles back, he's connected to what we're saying, because we've just had we've had a connection. and he's going to stay more engaged than fall asleep. And if he fell asleep in the front row, I don't know what to say about that, but it would be bold for you, Ian, to fall asleep in the front row. Okay, good posture. It's actually going to help your confidence a little bit. You're probably going to breathe in more oxygen and be able to project your voice more. And then don't speed talk. Slow down. I've even stopped myself going, wow, I'm moving too fast. Take a moment, say like, all right, we're going to get through this together. And I want you to understand my content. So I'm going to slow down a little bit more. And again, physical emotion, be physical, be present. Think of it as being on stage, because you kind of are. And while you don't have to be a drama expert, it's an opportunity for you to kind of to be a little theatrical. And I think that's okay. I don't know if any of you saw last year in Calgary, Craig Witten and I took a pretty unique spin on a presentation where we actually created a campsite setting, and we walked in with our backpacks and headlamps, and we sat down like we were at a campfire. There's a lot of theater there, but we wanted to create a mood and an atmosphere that was different. And I think we achieved it. We got some really good feedback, and I don't know if we can get a new presentation in by the deadline, but we're thinking of something similar. Okay, helpful hints to avoid. So these are some of my pet peeves, because I have a lot of staff that we train, and they go out and interview for work. And speaking of they didn't get a lot of training in architectural university work either. You think they might, but they didn't. So and kind ofs and sort ofs and like, these are all these colloquial, and they're not even colloquialisms. They're these habits that we've all formed when we're speaking casually to each other, but they can get in the way sometimes. I earlier made a reference to jargon, acronyms, initialisms, NWACUHO, that's maybe not a great example. Everyone knows that, but in architecture, we have a lot of jargon. And if I'm talking about a project at Oregon State or at University of Washington or whatever, and I talk about SD and DD and GMP, you don't know what that is, or you might if you've done a bunch of projects, but I need to stop and say, no, that's schematic design. Oh, now I use two words that you still don't understand. Well, what is schematic design? Schematic design is the early conceptual part of a design process where we develop the bigger concepts. So like, that's what I need to do to communicate what might be a technical piece of my presentation, but I didn't invite you in because I used acronyms. Okay, notes. Don't read your notes. I think it is perfectly okay for you to have notes and to refer to them and to have a bunch of note cards and you flip through them, but you really need to practice thinking about your note cards as cliff notes or prompts only, because if you sit there and read your cards, again, you're not making eye contact, you're not engaging, you're looking down, all of the things that we already talked about. The screen, this big screen behind you that might have beautiful images or bullet points. If you're only staring at the screen and talking to your screen, guess what? You've turned your back to your audience. You're not even acknowledging them. So and it's easy to fall into that habit because you want to refer to the screen sometimes. Oh, I'd like you to look at this image, but you've got to look at it and then look back to your audience, and they will be looking at it. So you kind of need to know what's on the screen and what your point is. Goes back to practice. Swaying, I mentioned that in terms of movement. Moving is important, but swaying, again, kind of feels like maybe you're not confident being up on stage. And so little things like that, they're just little tricks to avoid. Oh boy, I've just been delivering all that message right there. Sorry, forgot I had other slides. See, look, I kind of made a mistake, but I'm going to roll with it. Okay, and kind ofs and sort of, they're distracting. They could convey a lack of confidence. Too much of it, and you could risk losing your audience. And it's terrible when you're always thinking about this thing and sort of, I did this, and it's kind of like that. No, it isn't. It is like that because you're telling me it is. So it's not kind of, and it's not sort of. It is. So, sometimes the best way to listen to yourself is to record yourself. You would be shocked. And I've already said a bunch of times. during this presentation, but it's not, they're natural and they're acceptable. But when it's your default, it just can be very distracting. And it might not even sound very professional. So jargon, I think I talked through that already. My apologies, I should have been on these slides. Industry terminology, the language of student housing may be commonplace for you, but it may not always be commonplace to your audience, or architecture or construction, things like that. The audience might miss a main point because you used an acronym and didn't define it. And therefore you could be alienating people. It doesn't feel like I should be in this room because I don't understand half the things that they're saying. But maybe I would learn a ton if there was more explanation. So I think I've made my point clear here. I talked about reading your notes. Forgive me. You know, they're cue cards, they're prompts, they're not notes to read from. And I mentioned staring at the screen as well. Oh, Kurt. And swaying. It's all about feeling comfortable and really delivering that sense of comfort and confidence. So my pro tips, instead of saying or kind of or like, just pause. Just be quiet for a moment, because then you can gather your thoughts in your head versus doing it sort of with the sort of ums in front of you. I think it's okay to use jargon as long as you, or acronyms, as long as you define it, like I did with this whole schematic thing, right? Now you might understand what I'm talking about when I said schematic design, and here's what I'm sharing with you and why that was important. The notes, having notes in front of you, when I see that that person cared enough to prepare. They wrote down their notes. They want to make sure that they're clear. I think that's great. Just don't read them. And the eye contact thing, right? I mean, architects always have graphics and big, beautiful pictures, and I'm proud of those pictures too, but I can't be mesmerized with my picture. I need to be mesmerized with my audience and make sure they are understanding why I have the image and what I'm saying about the image. All right, we are 30 minutes into this conversation, so there's going to be a lot of time for some questions. So my final thoughts, I think I noted that earlier. Just allow yourself to think of this a little bit as theater and have fun with it. Let your individual personality come out through the presentation, because that's fun when I'm getting to know you, because you're authentic up at the front of the room, and you're vulnerable and you're passionate. I'm like, love the presentation. You did great, because I was so engaged because you were so engaged. I like telling jokes, not like knock, knock, who's there, or, you know, whatever, but sometimes just lightening up the room with, you know, making fun of the technology that just went wrong, or if you're presenting with somebody, the banter back and forth is really fun. So yesterday, I'm just going to take a little scenic detour. This presentation that I gave yesterday, 2 people came up to Tim and I and said, you guys need to do a podcast. He said, I love the presentation, but it was the way you were so comfortable with each other. And that was a huge compliment. I don't know if we're going to do it, but because we just kind of like goofed around up on stage. And I love doing that with Craig Whitten. We goof around a little bit. But we have a message. It's not just all theater. We are trying to deliver some important content. The personal insight, love stories that tell a little bit about who you are as an individual, your life experience, how you're connecting your life experience to the content that you're sharing. It's just more powerful, and it leaves me wanting to come to your next presentation next year or whenever, because it's like, that was really good. They're just fun to listen to, and I learned something. So if I ever see, you know, Ian or Allie present again, I'm going to make sure it's on my personal schedule. There's an resources for more information. So I did a little bit of homework, and these are online, and this is recorded, so I think we can make the PDF available to you. You can click on these and you can read. There are going to be some similar themes that I just presented. So, you know, I really think this is my wrap up. I would like to entertain some questions now, and we can go back to any slide or just have a good conversation. So, questions?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to make a point of noting, like, thank you so much for talking about the accessibility piece and how important that is to make sure that there are captions and that microphones are available so that way everyone can actively engage with the presentation. This was really great and a lot of helpful tidbits, Kurt, so thank you so much.
Cool. Great. Thank you. Yeah, I just have had, your presentation last year was eye-opening as well, Allie, not to, if anybody was there, but and in past years, just it opens even our eyes as designers to accessible graphics, right? And architects, it can be we're captivated by imagery and graphics, and sometimes it's too much. Sometimes it confuses the point you're making. So yeah, thank you. Thank you. We're continually evolving as well.
Mine isn't a question either, but I just wanted to say that I think it's a good point that you made about the audience doesn't necessarily already know what you know, and you're bringing something to it. And I think sometimes when we speak on things, we feel like it's so basic that everybody knows it. And so I think that was just a really good reminder.
Yeah, thank you. Getting back to my presentation yesterday, Tim and I were both like, we're talking about design build, and it's a certain delivery model. And I don't think we were bringing earth-shattering whatever to the table, but we framed it in a very accessible way. And we use the analogy of a car and lifting the fog. And I think part of it is our delivery and our very casual style, but also it wasn't so high tech and you should do it this way. And the Design Build Institute of America says do this. We're like, this is about lifting the fog, clarity for everyone that's in the car. And people like that. So make it personal, make it your own. That's good advice. Questions. There's got to be some questions. Maybe you're working on a presentation right now. Oh, is there a question in the chat? Maybe.
Kurt, I just shared the link for folks that if they so that they're aware that we do have the registration and program proposals available for folks to not only get information if they want to submit a program proposal or are considering doing so after hearing your wonderful presentation, and so then go there and take a look at that and submit. I would also encourage folks, as Kurt mentioned in his presentations, NWACUHO really prides itself to be able to provide opportunities for folks to present. So it is one of our goals is to allow folks that are maybe newer professionals or have maybe not have presented at a conference before to have been gain that experience. One of our philosophies really is, if you haven't had experience, how are you going to get experience if you don't have the opportunity? So we want to give you the opportunity and folks the opportunity to put together a program proposal, again, as Kurt mentioned, about something that you've had experience with, been involved in doing, partner with a colleague from either your own institution, different department, or another institution. Those are great ways to be able to connect and share, learn something, and be able to provide information. And so that link is in the chat for folks, and so just something to consider. Matthew, you got a question?
I do. So sorry, I was late. So you may have talked about this, but I was wondering if you had provided anything as any tips or advice for those who are doing those group presentations, that it's more than one person or a group of people, and maybe some best practices around that.
Well, that's a good question, Matthew, and makes me want to expand maybe some content for this if we give this next year. So I'm going to think on the fly here. Speak, when you're co-presenting, there's some added complexity, but it's not anything to be worried about because you're going to be sharing content with someone else, right? So here's what I do for NWACUHO or SCUP or all these other presentations. If we're co-presenting, we spend some time meeting together ahead of the abstract submission, right? And just, hey, here's what I'm interested in talking about. And we have this dialogue. It almost becomes a bit of a jam session. And we might arrive at a new theme just through the engagement. Hey, Kurt, you had that experience. It makes me think about this experience that I had. And then I'm like, that's interesting. These two things are starting to connect for me. And then, so I guess that's the first step, is spending some time together, engaged in dialogue about a theme or a topic, and see through that if notes can be taken and a bit of a storyline can be formed. So that's the first step. I often take the first crack at writing the abstract or the outline, and I'll send it to my institutional partner, and they'll make edits, and we'll kind of clean it up and get it submitted, and then hopefully we'll be accepted. And from there, we start to craft our message. I go back to the outline. It's really important, because if your outline is very clear, it could start to be the collection of slides that come together. And then I would say, Matthew, more conversations, right? We start forming the subject matter, and we start bringing in content, whether it's images or graphics or research or whatever, to tell that story. And I schedule practice sessions where we walk through the slides. When here I want to say this, and here I want to say that. And so the first practice might be what I call the big stumble, because we're not timing ourselves. We're just saying, this is what I want to say on this slide. This was the point I want to make here. And then we do at least practice once. And oftentimes it's after the first day of the opening reception, we get together because we want to run through it one more time. So if the thread of that storyline is probably more prep is required, because you're engaging with 1 or 2 or 3 people. There's also panel discussions, which is kind of a different animal, because you might be a panelist or you might be the moderator, and there's a little bit different nuance to those as well. But I would say more practice and more dialogue, so that you're developing the storyline together.
Great. No, I think that's good. I will say that it seems that at least for my institution, and I feel like I've heard it at others, is that, having your proposal accepted at a conference can increase, the support for you going to the said conference.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people are pursuing that more and more, which is great. And I will say, just for me personally, co-presenting, I've done kind of both models. And the nicest thing for me about co-presenting is, you do your piece of the presentation, and then the attention goes on the other person. So that gives you a second to get your breath, get your thoughts together. If you're going through some sort of stress response, to kind of, calm yourself down in some way. And so, especially for new people, I find that to be really effective, because it just gives them a second within that presentation to get themselves together. So anywho.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
Great response. Yeah, for me, I encourage my staff to submit abstracts. I know I'm not a public institution, but we also establish budgets for NWACUHO and NWACUHO and all these other conferences. And so when one of my staff reaches out, makes a submission, they've basically just committed themselves and the firm to funding their whether it's presenting in Eugene or Calgary. I'm sending them there because they were successful in submitting. So hopefully that's some incentive, right, for your staff and your teams. Any other thoughts? How can this presentation be better? So I think, Matthew, you just described different styles of presenting. Maybe I could expand on that a little bit. Co-presenting and moderating. It's good thoughts. Anything else?
Tiffany, your hand's raised.
Yeah, Kurt, this isn't a thought for the presentation, but a question. I know you mentioned a little about not needing to be a content expert, kind of overcoming imposter syndrome. And I can't remember if you spoke to this, but how do you get those newer staff, those newer professionals to kind of get through the hurdle of just putting a presentation out there? What are maybe the tips or motivational pieces that you say, like, just do it? To Ian's point, I think NWACUHO is maybe one of the most supportive regions for newer presenters that I've experienced. And anytime I've presented, there's always staff at other institutions that either have done it better or have never heard of it. And so it's a really neat just audience, but maybe how do you get some of those newer staff to at least cross the divide and submit the proposal?
Yeah, good question. And I can try and share from personal experience because again, I don't work at an institution, but I have, many staff of different, that have maybe 5 years of architectural experience up to 15. And some of my principals hate presenting. They hate going to interviews. They're good at it, but they hate it. Now, can you guess? I enjoy it, right? So what do? I'll often hear something that they say or see something that they're working on and just be impressed by them. And I will tell them that. So that's nice. Compliments are always lovely. But I'm like, that is an interesting point you just brought up. And I think it could be an interesting subject matter for a presentation. So I think the answer, Tiffany, is a lot of encouragement and then support. So it's not okay for the boss, me, to swoop in and say, I think you should present at NWACUHO and then fly off. They don't know where to begin. So support looks like offering to sit down with them, to brainstorm the idea, to make recommendations on an institutional partner. So for Mahlum, while I feel like a community member, I have to present with an institutional partner, one of you. So I think about the relationships I've made over time, and I say, hey, I think you should present with Allie. And I say that because that's actually happening right now. But to that point, and then how do we support? I have a Word document that's basically spells out the uploading instructions, and I say, like, you need a 600-word essay and an outline. Start with your outline. Let me review it. Let me help you. Let me whatever. So a lot of support, and then if they actually have made it to the been accepted, then I'm a sounding board for them. Try your practice on me, right? Come and let me guide you or help you. I don't want to take over, but if I can be a sounding board, I would do that. So just a lot of support on all of the steps is the answer, which is hard because that takes time, and you all have busy day jobs. I'm sorry, there was a hand up that I maybe missed.
Oh, I was just clapping at what
Oh,
you were
clapping.
saying to like encourage folks and not just saying, hey, you should do this and then letting them run with it.
Right.
Like giving them some actual
Well, and
feedback and support.
Yeah, and even this presentation, right? I gave this last year, and I think Ian and Dave Craig said, let's do this again. If I do this for the next 10 years, that's another way that we can, and maybe it'll modify and get better. A way to help prepare folks. And like I said, if you want to schedule time with me and try on your presentation with me between now and February, you know what? I'm all ears. I love the organization. I've like I said, I feel like a family member, and it has been so enjoyable to learn from you all. If I can help, then I want to help. The other thing I'll shift to my last slide is just encourage me. You got this. You can do it. And you know what? You don't have to be perfect, and you could try something and it could bomb, right? And I don't even know what that means, because I don't think anybody ever has a terrible presentation, but you'll learn something from the first time you do it. You're like, oh, I'm not going to do that again. Or I got to make sure I have water. Usually I think the conferences provide water up front, and I think that's really helpful because I am coming off of a little cold right now. So I have a cough drop, and every once in a while I'll pause and get some water. It's totally okay if you're doing it on stage. Yeah, putting yourself out there is great. It's growth, it's development. You don't have to become Steve Jobs and everything that comes out of your mouth is life-changing. I don't think that's the expectation. Right, any final thoughts? Any ideas that you guys are bouncing around for NWACUHO or other conferences? Got a captive audience. We can listen and give you some feedback.
I have tapped some folks. It's not a presentation idea for me, but I think there's also value in, if you're concerned about not being that expert presenter, or you don't necessarily know what you can share, if there's something unique that your department is doing or your institution is doing. I tapped some colleagues because OSU has a really amazing program that I would love them to just talk about how they created it, how they got it up and running, and how that first year went, right? And so I think there's also some like, oh, I could just present about my job. Like I could present
yeah.
about what I do and the hurdles that we've had to go through just to make this first year happen. Because there's so many people and processes out there just in our region that I love learning from. And so it doesn't even have to be something where you're like, I'm going to present about this topic. Present about what you do, and it could be really unique to some other institution.
Yeah, that's a great point, Tiffany, because as you network and engage at Northwest NWACUHO or at other venues with your peers in different institutions, there obviously are commonalities and unique initiatives. And thinking beyond a single idea to reach out and say, well, how do you handle this? Or we're doing it this way. And they're like, that's cool. We're doing it this way. I like that idea. You might even make the work better at your own institution, but you're linking subject matter that's not a specific thing to a broader theme. Couple of examples. One of my staff, one of my colleagues, many of you know him, Jeremy Rear, has been very passionate about safety and security. So he's trying to develop a panel discussion with 4 different institutions that are to talk about safety. So that's a rich conversation. That's to me, that's a home run right out of the gate. And I don't know what he's going to talk about yet, but the idea that he's bringing 4 different institutions together to talk about one topic is interesting. A number of years ago, Dan Larson and I gave a presentation on just what goes into building a residence hall. And it allowed him, when he was the director of housing and dining at the time, to talk about what they need to do internally. And then I got to be an architect and talk about, well, this is what the architect does, and here's how this thing gets built. And it's interesting because it was a sort of a 100 level, this is how you build a building, because one day you might be on a committee working with architects, engineers, and contractors. And so to having that baseline was maybe a good idea. I've often thought he and I should do it again, because it's probably been 12 years since we gave that one. So thinking about themes and linking them to your peers in the institution is also a rich way to develop content and not be the content expert.
All right, well, it is about that time, and so I want to take an opportunity to thank Kurt for his presentation today and presenting on the information. Thank you all for joining us for our November 1st Friday webinar, and this is and has been recorded, and so we will get this posted onto the websites. So if you have colleagues that you think would be interested in this content, please encourage them to view the recording or reach out to Kurt or myself with any questions you may have about registration and or submitting a program proposal. So thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your Friday. Have a great weekend.
Yep. Thank you so much for letting me join and share what I can.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you.